Well, welcome everybody to Capital Expenditures Planning Committee meeting. Apologies for the lateness. Just to note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available later. Is there somebody that has the agenda that can help me? I think we have to, Kim, I believe we have to read the notice. Is that correct?
Yes.
I can read that. I have it right here.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so in the following manner. Zoom meeting ID 956-2662-5653, passcode 377038. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so for reasons of economic hardship and despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So kicking off on the agenda, and I'm doing this off my head, so I apologize as I'm driving, but I think the first thing we had was minutes, but did we get minutes circulated? I know we hadn't had them earlier today, but.
No, I did not get those out. I will have both sets for you on Monday night.
Okay, so we can skip over that. So I believe the next item then is to hear from the IT department on their capital items.
Okay. Go ahead, Mark. Mark, you're muted.
May I ask, was there any backup shared for the IT items? Because I know we got 3 different things for the school. Is it
Yes.
just buried in one of those?
I think it went out with the first set.
All right, thank you. I'll keep looking.
The first email?
The first email has the IT requests.
I think it had school lines in there. Did that get updated or? What is the IT request?
Right.
Okay.
We ready?
We are ready.
Okay. Ready? Hold on. Okay. The town of Westboro was awarded a IT grant from the state, and they looked at our hardware, network, backup, email, and staffing and organization. And then essentially the 3 capital requests are a result of this investment. So we have 3 projects, the Microsoft 365 migration, the network upgrade, and the infrastructure upgrade. So I'll go through each one and then pause for questions after each one. So currently, we have a split domain for email. We have Courier, Hosted Exchange, and Gmail. It's very cost effective because of the Courier. I think it's probably around $5 an account versus almost $100 for Hosted Exchange and Gmail. But it's difficult to manage, and at times it's very challenging for users and IT. And they don't have the same security standards across all platforms. And also the town does use Microsoft Office. So this is a high priority recommendation from the assessment. 2 of the 3 email services do not offer 2-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. So that is a security issue. The town's cyber insurance will require 2-factor or multi-factor as of July 1, 23, which could result in reductions of coverage, higher deductibles, or denial of coverage. 365 is an industry-leading solution, and it aligns with our licensing. The benefits, we have a single email and office platform. It streamlines operations for IT end users. It comes with OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. It also comes with Azure, and it also includes Microsoft Office licensing for most users. So this is the budget summary. The 33,960 is based on a quote from the IT assessment, and then the 10,125 would cover the first 3 months, assuming that this went to town meeting and was approved. And then there's a certain amount for contingency. So it should be noted that the annual cost of 40,500, 16,300 is already budgeted. So really, we're looking for only a 24,200 increase. So questions on the Microsoft 365 migration?
This is Andrew. Are there any soft costs like training or anything else that needs to be done beyond what these costs would represent as we roll in the new technology?
So probably there will be some training. I'm not sure what's involved with training, but yes, there could be some training for users as well as IT. The IT training budget should cover IT, but for users, we might have to do something else.
Yeah, Andrew, this is Kim. We think right now there are some pieces of training that we can absorb in our existing training budget.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mark. Is Microsoft 365 compatible with Google Docs?
In what way?
Well, whether you can transport information from Google Docs into Microsoft, etc.
I mean, you
system,
can.
of course, uses Google Docs.
Right. Yes. I mean, you can make it work. I don't know how, to what level of compatibility. They're generally competitors, and it's not like they integrate with each other. So, there are some, integration things we'd have to work out. But by and large, we really don't have a lot of Google accounts now. So that it doesn't change much from where we're at now.
Thank you.
Mark, this is Ian. What's ongoing? What's the ongoing license fee? And am I assuming that would go in future years into the budget, IT budget?
Yes. So the 16,300 is already in there for email and Microsoft Office licensing. So what this would be looking for is an increase of about $24,000 per year.
Ian, if I may, we did have some discussion about, so this is basically the implementation costs are one-time costs, and that's why we thought it was appropriate to bring it into the capital budget as a capital request rather than just have it show up in an operating budget, just given the nature that it's sort of a one-time upfront implementation cost. And then, as Mark has done, he's identified the ongoing costs, so to be part of the IT's operations budget moving forward. So this a little bit different than some of the other projects you've seen. I don't think you've seen many of this nature, but we did have some discussion, and that's sort of how we landed at it belongs. We felt it was appropriate to bring it forward as part of capital.
Yep. No, that actually totally makes sense to me. I was just curious what the ongoing was, and it does sound like after this year this is capital because it's implementation, and then it will be the licensing or whatever will be a budget going forward, or an increase to the license going forward.
So Mark, I just had one more thing to confirm. And you mentioned getting a grant from the state. Was that grant really just, did it end at the analysis and the review of the existing systems?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. The state grant only covered the assessment and the reporting, and that was it.
Thank you.
Any more questions for office? Okay, I'm going to move on to the network upgrade. So we have a gateway firewall and core switches. Almost everything flows through the gateway router. It's essential for operations and for security. And the core switches, obviously, for the town and the police networks, those are the primary switches for those environments. So obviously, very important for operations and security. So another high priority recommendation from the IT assessment. The gateway firewall we have now is 9 years old and does not include any redundancy. The core switch at town is 14 years old and the software support ends at the end of this year. And the police core switch is 5 years old and end of life is June of 23. The reason for that is when we bought it, and also the support got sold to another company. So the benefits of an upgrade, we would have 2 gateway firewalls, which would provide redundancy. So every time we perform maintenance, we wouldn't have to take the whole entire, internet, email, everything down. I mean, it's a best practice to have 2. New gateway firewalls will also provide enhanced security as it integrates with our managed detection and response service. And the new hardware, overall, the switching and the gateways will provide better performance, more capabilities, and just improved management. This is the breakdown. So you can see for the 2 gateway routers, once again, these are from the quote from the IT assessment, 9,543 for the hardware, 6,870 for implementation. And then for the 2 core switches, 13,732 and 3,276 for implementation. And then I added a little amount for contingency. Questions?
Could you help me understand what implementation costs are? Are those body hours of people that we're paying to do the work, or is there additional hardware associated with that as well?
No, that's labor. That's for them to configure, migrate our existing, configuration from existing hardware over to the new hardware, and then add any new configuration that might be needed.
Okay, so they're vendor costs external to the town.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, just as a point, I guess, of information, do we have a backup system for, I guess, the base programming? So if anybody does hack the system, that we can, in effect, restore it?
Yes, we do have a backup. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna move to the big one, the infrastructure upgrade. So the town utilizes a mix of physical and virtual servers at multiple locations. They support database applications, domain management, file storage, backup systems, security systems, phone systems, building management systems, and various utility programs. Reasons to upgrade. This was another high priority recommendation from the assessment. We have no failover or high availability at the police, only a single virtual host. The town storage array and 2 blade servers are end of life at the end of this year. Remaining physical servers should be consolidated. No HA, under leveraged, more points of failure. Multiple physical servers at both locations are near the end of life with older operating systems. and police have a large storage requirement and backup servers near capacity. Additionally, they have a security system that's going to have to be migrated soon, and it's going to need a lot more capacity than what it has now. So multiple reasons to get to new hardware. So some of the benefits, you would gain replication between town and police, which would provide data protection and disaster recovery. It centralizes the data and backup. Obviously, a reduction of physical servers adds a lot of benefits. Less sprawl, less electricity, less cooling, and then centralized management and resources just streamlines operations in general. Here is the breakdown. So the storage array is really the bulk of that money, that 85,000. So you're looking at about 50,000 for the array, and the 2 servers are about 15 grand each. 10,000 for implementation, and then the same for the police, and then a small amount for contingency. Questions?
If memory serves me, we've had a couple of requests on the warrants lately about refurbishing spaces that were keeping keeping hardware cool. Is this going to be addressing, if not those 2 instances, other instances like that around town?
I'm not sure if I follow your question. So are you saying that this is? Oh, go ahead.
I was just suggesting that if we're moving this stuff onto servers, centralized servers, that there's the hope we can actually move some of this stuff to the cloud. And you talk about reducing creep. I'm hoping that means we have fewer sections of buildings cordoned off with hardware in them running hot.
No, that doesn't change. So we still have a lot of infrastructure in all these rooms in the IDFs and MDFs. You still have switches and routers and UPS equipment and you've got other servers, other infrastructure at various places. Some of that stuff just doesn't go away. And even though this does reduce some cooling, it's still going to put out a lot of heat. I mean, you can't not have it in a space that has cooling. And we don't really have a data center where we could just put all of them in one place.
I know I wasn't the only person. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. The cooling wouldn't be adequate if we put them all in one place.
Sure. I know I wasn't the only person asking about the possibility about the ultimate plan to move some of this stuff to cloud-based computing for a lot of the same reasons we're talking about here: reduced cooling, reduced space, reduced infrastructure. And I think the statement at the time was, oh, yes, that's part of our longer-term plan. We're looking to do that. Here we have $200,000 that's coming forward. I would love to know how we square the ultimate migration of some of our infrastructure to the cloud with a $200,000 investment that sounds like it's still very grounded in physical boxes.
Correct. So the plan is for some things to go to the cloud, and I would anticipate in the next 4 to 7 years that certain applications will definitely go to the cloud, but other stuff is going to stay. At least that's what it looks like at this time. And I mean the assessment. I was actually curious if they were going to recommend to put everything in the cloud, and they said no, that's not a good idea. This is what they recommended. They did say that you want to start looking at that in the next, start looking ahead in 24, 25 and start trying to get things to the cloud, but they didn't actually offer a roadmap beyond 5 years. They just said that's something that we need to look at. It's going to take a long time to put things into the cloud.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mark?
Yeah, I just had Kim and Mark. I had whole assessment. I mean, these are the high priority items. Other items, are those other items going to be out in future years on the plan?
Yeah, that's to be determined. I would think that those will, first of all, they're going to be, they're not as expensive as what we're looking in this first round. And I think we'd spread those out a little bit more. They're not as high priority, and probably will evaluate all of them because and maybe not all of them make the cut. Things change.
And
5
I think
years.
we were evaluating funding, how those would be funding, and if they're truly capital expenses or if they really become fit better in an operating budget or even a separate article that you could draw down from as we move through the implementation and make decisions. Because frankly, not all of the decisions have been made yet about how we're moving forward. These are the
Correct.
things we know now.
Correct.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for Mark? Hey, Mark, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm going to release my screen. And if you're all set, I'm going to.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank
You
you.
were good. You were good to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think moving on our agenda, next on the agenda is the school department.
All right, if you're ready, I will dive in. Good to see all of you. Amber Bach, Superintendent of Schools, and I am here with two other amazing colleagues, Kelly Giacopello, the Assistant Director of Buildings and Grounds, and David Gorder, Director of Finance and Administration. David Gordon works very, very closely and oversees Kelly and Bob Ferguson, Director of Buildings and Grounds, and together we work to forge kind of the work it takes to manage all of our buildings. I'm going to share my screen here so I can pull up this projection. All right, I'm going to open it up here. So good to see you. We sent a lot of materials over regarding what we hope would be thoughtful backup on the projects that we've submitted for FY24 and 25. And we will be looking at stepping you through those. And so this is more just a visual kind of talking point slideshow. I think the meat of what you need has been shared in the packet, and I'll step you through, and then Kelly and Dave and I can answer questions. I just want to give a shout out to Kelly. She really is the keeper of the depth of knowledge for finding out. She's like a roof expert now. So what we're going to do is we're going to move through, and I'm going to be an engineer in my next life after the amount of projects we've done. So tonight we're going to step through our submissions for 24 and 25. We're going to discuss the long range planning, your 10-year developed outlook, as well as our need to plug more thoughtfully into the 10-year developed outlook, our DRA update discussion for the district assessment. I want to talk a little bit about technology, and then we will do some questions. All right, so feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll kind of keep it informal. We are in the middle of budget season, and we know that our budget is a substantial part of the commitment of the town, as well as then the substantial weight of capital projects. So over the last several years, I just think I really want to give a shout out to Kim and to this committee. And the work you have done is to frame really a much more in-depth, thoughtful budgeting process for capital. And I know you've got progress you want to make, but I just feel really good about the sense that we're taking just a really wide lens on all the projects in town and trying to be strategic. And I guess that's the last part of where we really stick with budgeting goals. We really try to stay in a space of collaboration and strategic planning, and really, while we want to maintain the excellence of our buildings and the investment in our communities. So the annual cycle of review is always grounded in like this rotational assessment. We work year round with buildings and grounds. Bill Gabarino is our engineer who does all of the oversight of the HVAC systems and all of our boilers. One man holds down the fort on 6 buildings, and he is single-handedly probably the biggest cost-saving measure that Westboro has. He does an amazing job. And we have 2 satellites as well with the preschool and the borough, and he also oversees maintenance and support of those places that have lots of kids in them across all of these buildings. So we're going to we review the buildings, we assess our capital items, we shift them around based upon increase in need or the ability to do some deferred maintenance. We're always looking at ways to stretch out those cost impacts because they are substantial. And then we gather newly updated cost estimates each year so that when we submit to you, our numbers are current and as close as we can get to representing what you need. We really want to manage for strategic offsets, intervening with repairs, and there's actually 2 repair options in here that I think help us financially. And then of course we have to manage crisis because you really can't always anticipate what's going to happen. So let's do a quick review of 23 because it always rolls into 24. In 23, we had 4 projects that came forward and funded in a variety of supports, either through ARPA or through capital. The playground is currently ordered and the grounds are prepped and it looks beautiful and we're waiting for the equipment to go in. The Hastings roof had been accepted as a capital project in your cycle, anticipated to be paid by ARPA funds. And we actually pulled that article over and put in the Armstrong roof because we had the emergency failure of that large section of roof. So the Hastings roof you'll see in the capital request for 24. The high school chiller system is currently under design and the freezer is on back order, but has been ordered and the funds are encumbered. So really the comprehensive support we got from capital last year is well underway. So let's look at 24. Just take a second there and look at the quality of that picture. I just think that you guys do amazing work. I think this community is just such a great place to live. And the quality of the project, it fails while substantial and sometimes overwhelming in implementation, is a beautiful, beautiful project. We just scheduled the first date for a ribbon cutting and I will make sure all of you are there and you get to celebrate the investments in the community. How cool are those slides, by the way? The kids love them. So for FY24, you have 2 proposals in front of you. You have the Hastings roof, which I said rotated into our top priority for 24, and you have a mill pond restoration, which we've added in after we did all of the assessments of the status of what was going on with roofing and how expensive it was. We have a kind of a restoration project, which we think is very worthy of providing ways to space out the capital impacts of the roofing needs across the district. Let's look at those more closely. So Kelly's the expert and she can give you more detail, but I've been tracking and talking about the Hastings roof a long time, so I can certainly highlight it. This would be to replace the entire PVC roof. It's 80,000 square feet. It's 27 years old, close to the same as the Armstrong, which was 30 years old. It's the same design. It had better drainage and it's given us a good life. We had drainage issues on the Armstrong roof, which kind of escalated its failure. However, we need to be clear that the Hastings roof is well moving into beyond life. It has seams that are failing, flashing that is beginning to separate. It has the cracked membrane issues that really led to problems at Armstrong. And then the drainage does remain concerning. But what starts to escalate the degrading of the roof is when you get wet installation. So the insulation starts to get wet because the membrane is breaking down, which is the actual coating that is like covering the roof. And you can see that in the picture there. The membrane is that kind of this kind of whitish gray, and you can see the wet spots. The membrane itself starts to degrade, and then you get basically leaking into wetting the installation that's between the covering and the ceiling inside the building. The existing roof replaced will be a multi-ply redundant roof assembly. It's installed with a cold adhesive, which they find to be the best for our climate. It has a 40-year warranty. It's a $4.2 million cost. With that, it has calculated in that cost the design, bid, build work that needs to be done with an architect. It includes a cost estimate along with a cost escalation. So the design is included in that cost estimate along with the cost escalation of what we anticipated it would be by spring of 24. In looking at the Mill Pond roof, so this is an opportunity request. I think that the thinking on this is that it's a maintenance intervention. The roof is currently 23 years old. Like, time flies by. People think of Mill Pond, it is our youngest building beyond the addition of Fales and the preschool. But that roof is 23 years old. It's in good repair, but it is at the point of wear, and it's available for a restoration process. It would extend its life by a 20-year warranty, which would really be advantageous. We used a process called ProScan, where they basically use an infrared thermal imaging with heat to make sure that the insulation is in good shape and that the overall infrastructure and design of the roof is fundamentally sound enough that with a base repair to any cracks or anything issue-wise, they can then apply this 2-ply overlay restoration, 2 full coats of this polyura coating, and it gives us a 20-year extension on that roof. Replacing that roof would be multi-million-dollar, and this for the 1.2 lets us kick the can down the road on that roof for another 20 years. So we consider that a cost-saving intervention proposal, knowing that the other roofs we have are, really expensive. I think that in looking at your rotation of capital, the assessment of the ProScan is good for a year, and the cost estimate we have is good for now, for the next 6 months at least, if not longer. At least I think they give us, Kelly, did they say how long they give us on the cost estimate of the 1.2? Because you put escalation in, right?
Yes, I put some percent.
So that's for this year. And yes, you could, if you waited on this, so this is my purpose in mentioning this, because you've got, a lot on your plate. If you wanted to, as you prioritize, we would have to go back and probably do the ProScan again. We paid for that in-house as part of maintenance in order to contain cost. And then we would get a new cost estimate, but the ProScan assessment would need to be done again. But I would say it's good for close to a year. So I just note that, because it's not that we couldn't go back and do a reassessment if you deferred this, but I just think it's important to know that then this is the problem when we want to get really tight estimates and really good preparation to come to you. You have to spend money to get there. And then if we defer projects, we do have to go back and do those expenditures again. But I do think that the potential of the roof being available for the seal coating 1 more year out, it's in good enough shape that it would still be viable, is my understanding from talking to Kelly. Is that accurate, Kelly?
Yes, it's, when, after they did the scanning, they felt it was very viable for this restoration process. And they fix any seams that need to be fixed. And we maintain it on a regular basis with our contractor, but they go through a more thorough looking for any small issues that they need to repair before it even has a coat put on it.
So it's in very good shape right now to go ahead and take this process. And so I think it's advantageous, but I want to make sure we try to come to you with like full transparency of full information as you weigh everything out. Like if you had to say, wow, the Hastings roof is our major priority, can we wait one more year on the Mill Pond roof? I think we could probably do this restoration process later. It's just that it's in a very prime place to do it now. We have the estimates and we've done the pro scan assessment of the thermal imaging. Let me keep moving and we can come back and talk more. So those are the projects for 24. Something that we've done as we look at 25 is that we've reshifted projects and we've clustered them together, hoping that we can get more advantageous bids. We focus on a singular building and we try to finish it so that the roof process then moves along kind of in a more cohesive manner. So in looking at the high school, again, a huge building, you're looking at clustering together 3 roof projects that let you then complete the things that need to be done at the high school and ensure that the roof is functional. So I'm going to step you through the 3 pieces of that roof project. The high school science wing is the C wing. It's 23 years old. It could use the same seal coat process that we just described for Mill Pond. So in trying to package together opportunity to start to get the roofs in alignment where you're doing one project per building in a more focused way, we assessed several of the roofs where the age was advantageous to consider getting an extension. And for the 1.6 million, we would get an extended warranty on C wing, which is a large section of the building. I mean, the high school is our largest building. In sections A and B, shockingly, that roof is 52 years old. Now, we could say shockingly that roof is 52 years old, or we could say, wow, Westboro maintenance people are amazing because we have kept that roof and gotten our lifetime 2 times over out of that roof. And that roof is literally, if you look at the picture, it's literally like plastic lay with the rocks on it. That's how they did the roofing back then. So it's literally stone that's just like kind of pushed around to keep the plastic and then to push the water. See how they create kind of drainage channels towards the drain? They do a lot of ongoing active maintenance on this roof. It is 52 years old. That is 70,000 square feet of roofing. It is, I didn't even list the issues with it. I just said total list of issues. Like it's at the end of its serviceable life. But I just have to give a shout out to the team that are up on that roof working on it all the time. A new roof will meet current code expectations and requirements. It's a $4.2 million expense. We built in cost escalations against when the roof would go on, in a year, and it's inclusive of design. It would give us a 40-year warranty. Mm-hmm. The third piece of the high school is the rim, which we've talked about quite a bit. At some point, we had some netting on sections of that rim. That's the edge that goes around the top of the roof. And it's concrete, which is kind of an interesting design. And you can see that it's starting to get the cracking and then the separation of sections of it, and which can become a safety issue, but it also just degrades the overall quality of the rim to serve the purpose of maintaining drainage and the things that it needs to do as it hooks up with the flashing along the edge of the roof. So it's 52 years old. Again, original, 6,500 square feet. It has multiple issues. The plan is actually very interesting and gives us a very good fix, both for visual of impact of looking good, and also I think a quality repair that's more cost effective. It retrofits it with basically aluminum covering, which is like a 0.04 depth of aluminum panels. And there's a system where they have to, and again, I think Kelly could talk about, the panels kind of like snap on over the rim. And there's some work that's done so that you don't get water behind them, and creates a retrofit for us that gives us a 30 to 40 year life expectancy. And that's about 500,000 to do that, is the package of that whole piece of work. So we've had the rim on for a while. We've had the high school roofs on for a while. You've seen those. We've just made decisions to kind of package them together. You know, I think it's the smartest approval cycle, but again, that's for your discussion. When you look at these, you can do them in package pieces if you had to, but you're going to get more advantageous, you know, cost and implementation if you can probably do them as a package. But you could break them into pieces if you had to. We've brought them to you in a manner that we think puts them in the order that they need to be managed, and then, you know, defer to the capital committee to understand it in the part of its larger whole. And again, that's for FY25. When we look at where we are as we plan forward, we know we gave you 5 years out, but I feel like we gave you 2 years tight. The third year has, you know, quite a few items in it, and then out through 5 years, with the caveat that we are currently looking at the new district capital assessment, so that we can give you a strong 10-year plan. We put out an RFQ for that. We got our quotes. You know, the cost escalation on everything. It came in, the best bid and the lowest bid was 155,000. So where we go with that is currently on hold because I don't have funding for that. So the school committee is going to have to talk it through and figure out what to do. It's just a larger cost than I think we anticipated. One of them was like 500,000, one was like 2, and then this one was 155. It was actually the best bid as well. So we feel like it would give us what we need. It was a really well put together quote. But we have to look at potential ways to fund that. And until we develop the budget and see where we are and track the year, it would have to either be a warrant article at some point in the fall, or we would try to set aside some revolving funds this year and package it so that we could then do it next year. So it just needs an assessment that I just feel like I can't currently wrap my head around while we're doing the budget that's due in a couple weeks. As you also plan forward, it's advantageous that Mark was here presenting. Typically, we have managed, you've seen technology capital articles come forward when we were doing, you know, a lot of large projects as we move to one-to-one, and when we have like a big server or something. We haven't had large capital projects for technology in front of you in several years. We've been able to break them out by building and manage them internally with budget and plan for them and set, you know, budget at the building level so that we know we were going to be pulling and using that to do capital items like a section of phones or a section of cameras. The cost escalation on some of the technology is making us stop and think about needing to package some of those together and potentially rotate 1 or 2 technology capital requests into our capital cycle. For example, the school committee had asked for an assessment of getting security cameras in all of our remaining buildings. They're about 2/3 done. And John just finished the assessment of that and got price estimates. And it's about $120,000 in order to do all the buildings. So right now that's on hold while we consider trying to break it apart and do building by building in small pieces. As I said, that's how we've managed it. But those overall costs just came in higher. And we're just kind of stopping to assess where we are. So I guess I would open it up for questions. I gave you this picture because that's a good one, because it's kind of like the balloon, the parachute, but the parachute's been repaired like a roof. It's got the stuff on the top there. So I use that picture for you. That's Armstrong. So I guess I would open it up to questions.
I have a question. It's I'm not sure if it's for you, Amber, or if it's actually for Kim. So I'm just going to throw it out there. The funding source for everything from the school is listed as free cash, and I'm sure, Kim, that your answer is don't worry about the funding source. We figure, that gets figured out separately. But I'm just wondering if for the $4.2 million, we're not really thinking of pulling that from free cash, are we?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's what I
and
thought.
I do hope to have, once we pull all of the requests together, which I now have everything, and we have a chance to review all of the asks, we look at, and by we, I mean the town manager, the finance director, we'll go through and look at the funding sources and adjust some of those. So before you do your evaluations, I would expect you'll have a revised summary with the actual proposed funding sources, specifically for the projects that would be part of next year's budget.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, actually, Lisa, because I talked about that a little bit with Kim and Christy, because the select board really determines the trajectory of recommended funding. And so while it's on there, I don't put a lot of attention in it because it's not within our purview, to be honest. I mean, we could say, hey, we think this is free cash, so we mark them as that and let you move forward with your process, because you're balancing all of the needs, and that's what your committee does, working with the select board, actually. So we just want to give you the information you need.
Thank you.
A question?
Yep.
Yeah, Amber, this is Peter Flynn. I'm here tonight as liaison with Sustainable Westboro. I know you're familiar with the Climate Action Plan because you're on the committee that developed it, but you might recall the plan calls for looking for opportunities for installing solar where it makes sense around town. And this past year, we asked Power Options to do an assessment for us of potential sites for solar installation, and they came back and said, well, probably your best sites are school roofs. But they also said you don't want to do it on an old roof because it complicates the whole process when you need to replace the roof. So try to look for opportunities at the time that school roofs are being replaced. And so my question is whether or not the work that's being proposed at Hastings and Mill Pond and at the high school would be compatible with the potential installation of solar on those roofs if and when the feasibility study looked at it and determined that it makes technical sense and financial sense.
Sure. So I can give you a few comments on that, and I'll do what I'm capable of. How about that? And even when we were on the doing the sustainability work together, we talked about the fact that I do believe that, solar in town is advantageous for us to move forward. I continue to circle back to the discussion that I don't understand the structure and complexity of the solar deal that the town is wrapped into. And until that's resolved, I feel like there's a big hold on some of those larger discussions. And I do believe that, Pete has sat down and we had some subcommittee discussion. I know Steve Durrett was there as well. And we began looking at discussing the fact that we need to have a strategic town plan that looks at, when and how much solar we can layer in. So that's piece number one. Piece number two, Mill Pond, we would have to do, that's right now, that's just a seal coat repair. Nothing is coming into that in terms of any structural upgrades. We certainly could pull the plans and look at, I mean, as our youngest building, you know, we could look at the structure of how Mill Ponds, we could just look at the plans and see whether or not it's advantageous for the opportunity of solar at some point, as one of our younger roof options. Hastings does not have the steel structure to take solar, is my understanding, and it would require an upgrade. It's going to get an upgrade to a portion so that we can put the HVAC on the roof when we do it. You've heard us talk about that. And so we certainly would get some escalation of understanding around cost for steel, but Hastings, this roof repair is simply the casement, you know, it's not a steel upgrade. The high school, I don't know, we would have to pull the plans and look. I'm not sure, you know, might be able to take some solar. It's just that it's got a whole bunch of other stuff up there already with all the air conditioning units and things. I think that we would be willing to look at solar parking lot covers, which is an area where, you know, we have some opportunity as well in the future. But I do think the first step is for Pete to resolve working with Christy and Leah on how we're going to make a plan for the financial impacts of adding solar against the contract we have.
Yeah, we've done a fair amount of work on that recently, and you're right. I think the current contracts present a financial near-term obstacle.
Yeah.
We're putting in solar to reduce the town's load. One of the things we're going to be looking at in the coming year is whether there are opportunities for putting in solar rather than having it used to offset town load, but actually sell it off-site to third parties. And so I guess my request is we're going to be doing work in parallel, and the work isn't going to move at the same pace, I think, as the projects that you presented tonight. But to the extent that the work that's done preserves the opportunity, you know, going forward, if the cost of doing that is already included, or if it's not included, how much more would it be to preserve the opportunity to put solar in as we develop? And I think your second point of we really need a town strategy in solar. I mean, a strategic plan. I just would hate to lose opportunities as we're going forward.
Yeah, I would say there's
I'd
a
like to
strategic.
speak to this issue in regards to you know, my membership on the school committee.
Yep.
One of the things that comes with the magnitude of these jobs under Mass General Law, that most of them require us to hire an engineer to go with it. And I think your point, Peter, is let's find out what the quality of the roof's structural capabilities are. Because clearly, if we know that any given roof is capable of supporting the additional loads relative to solar, then obviously we can preserve that in terms of what we do for a roof. Amber brought up the idea that there are other options on school property in terms of how we do the solar, which many other schools, I think it's Mendon, has the kind of system that Amber was talking about in terms of parking lot solar on, they look like roofs, but they're actually solar panels. Anyway, the long and the short of it is we have the opportunity, by necessity of having to hire an engineer to do the roof design, to also, and I should say roofing design, but also look at the structural supports of the roof itself so that we can know yes or no going forward in the future, what do we do? So
I agree.
I think with our experience at Fails, the opportunity is there, particularly as electric load in the town picks up in terms of electric vehicles. We have been at least interested in finding out what's going on with electric school buses, and a number of us on the school committee had an opportunity to visit that at the annual meeting of school committees. So, I mean, there is federal money out there, and there's going to be a lot of it, for which the town's demand is likely to increase by a conversion of from gas to gasoline, as well as natural gas to electric power sources for some of these town infrastructure projects. So your points are well made, Peter, and at least a number of us on the school committee are already aware of our interest in doing that. Obviously, if we can reduce the true cost to the town in terms of buying electricity, which certainly Fales is doing, the opportunities are there for many other opportunities as well.
We'll
Thank-
definitely,
thanks,
and
Steve.
with Kelly being here, we'll make sure that we add a note into the design assessment so that we can, while they're pulling plans and while they're doing design, to give us a secondary assessment on each of those roofs so we don't lose, opportunity. So we would understand if it could take solar as it currently is, at least get a base assessment, and then go from there. So, again, I think good things ahead for us. I don't think we're hurting ourselves with these projects, but we can definitely take advantage of getting some information from the design people.
Great.
That sounds good. Thanks, both Amber and Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Amber and Steve and Peter, for that. Back to I want to get us back to any questions on the capital expenditures items presented by Amber from the committee?
This is Andrew. I do have questions. The Hastings obviously shows up here with the $4.2 million roof, but we also know that the most recent town meeting had the article where we were aligning up a bunch of things that we're going to cover, like getting planning and estimating costs for things like the windows, the envelope of the building, other things that are going on, sprinklers, ADA. I don't see any of those. Obviously, we don't have any hard costs for those, but I don't even see a placeholder for any of those in the 5 years. Is that because we're not expecting any of those to come to fruition in the next 5 years, or is it just because we don't have a hard figure?
So good question. So our work to get alignment at Hastings around those projects will come when we get the cost estimate number, which we will have by town meeting for which we said when we came and requested we pick up the scope in the funds already set aside to do the ADA work, and that's currently underway, as well as the design for the completion of the HVAC. And it picks up looking at the roof component of HVAC for just the section of roof that would have to go up on with the HVAC units. So we will have those numbers by town meeting, but I think, until we get them, we don't know where we would drop them in, because it'll depend on how much of existing articles are available. So, there's a definite to do there, but I don't think just dropping numbers around, works well with this committee. I think that you want information that's grounded in good assessments. And so as soon as we get that information, we will be rotating them in to the cycle of by as soon as possible to move on that work.
Amber, just to follow on Andrew's question, like with the roof, is that possible to do without the ADA improvements?
So when we talked about it at town meeting, there was a discussion, and I think Fred weighed in to say that, some of this work could be packaged together, and that he was willing to look at the HVAC work moving forward, as long as some of the bids and the compliance and the work kind of was packaged for the ADA. But we would certainly be returning to him as soon as we get kind of cost estimates and what work needs to be done to get that in writing. And to
Okay, I want to speak to that, because we've been chasing this concept of cost estimates. And the cost estimate concept is what's gotten us into trouble, not only as a school committee, but other places in town as well. The scheme of things that was presented at town meeting was this for Hastings. We have ADA needs and we have a roofing need, as well as the HVAC. And the issue was, and the demand by the school committee is to get biddable drawings, go out to bid, and bring to town meeting what we can actually award a cost and not expect to have escalation and expenses beyond what the town has asked for. any concept and use of the word estimates, in my opinion, I would not support as a member of the school committee, because an estimate these days is useless. It has to be done with an engineering set of drawings, specifications, and you go out to bid with a firm price. Anything else is just a waste of everybody's time. And so when we're talking about, quote, the word estimate, I'm talking about engineered drawings, engineered specifications, and out to bid to bring to town meeting. And that's what I will demand, because we're just chasing our tails with estimates that nobody can guarantee until they're willing to put their signature on the line of a proposal. That's how
Yeah,
we
and
got into trouble with Hastings.
Right. And I think we clarified that that was going to be the appropriate way to move forward. But to Andrew's question, and it's a salient point, the expectation is that, as Steve has been clear, the school committee demanded, and we have pushed for with all of the people at Hastings, is to have biddable documents with numbers in hand that are hard. But we aren't currently by March, but we're not currently carrying a placeholder for any end, because it would be an estimate, and so we didn't want to do that for, you know, a dollar number that could come in that would be for completing that work. So go ahead, sorry, Kim.
I hope you got my opinion, I guess, of what we're doing here. And although these are quote estimates for 2024 and 25, the concept would be, in my own mind, is that a certain amount of money would be authorized by the town to go out and get the engineering done, the drawings and the specifications, so that we have something to bid when we think the money is going to be available. Without that in hand, again, I just think it's so much money on these projects, we can't afford to do it otherwise. So that's my feeling.
So Steve, yeah, and I probably not following here, but is that, I guess going back to Hastings roof, so are we looking at that as the number we have as a 2024 project, or is it looking that we're looking for money from a capital expenditure for engineering and design fees, and then it pushes the roof to a year further than that? Right.
Well,
I just want to make sure I'm following what you're saying.
Yeah, let's look at what we did at Armstrong. Okay, we had an estimate and we got burned. Based on the help of the Board of Selectmen and the town manager, we were able to say, yes, let's go out to bid, let's get this thing. We came back to the town with a hard number for that job. It took us 6 weeks, I think, to get from the beginning of the process to a bid in hand for that. So, you know, what we're talking about for 24 and 25 are, let's say, order of magnitude for the town to be able to slot this work. But I would suggest that what would happen in a prior time, anticipating, say, work in 2024 or 25, that seed money is provided so that, in fact, we can go out and get the engineering piece. So if you said engineering of a $4 million project was about 12% of that job, that's the kind of money that I think you need to do in order to have a high probability of getting a fixed price scope of work and total definition of the dollars. So okay. I don't know whether that helps you.
But that helps. I mean, that follows along what we've done or do in kind of water, sewer, whatever. It's a multi-year project of capital expenditures. But Kim, you keep raising your hand, so and you're on mute. But
that is exactly how these projects should be laid out in the capital plan. The year one funding request, if you look in the project detail sheets, it's even contemplated because there is a line for design, engineering, feasibility work. So the way these big projects should be coming through is those design, engineering, feasibility study work is budgeted in year one. with estimated costs, which will get refined once that year one is funded and that work is done. And then we come back with a firm number in the next year. So it does
Right.
create a multi-year capital process.
So when you think about it like that, we are, I mean, close to where we want to be in alignment with. This is an important discussion. I appreciate this. If everyone can stick with us, I know it's late, but currently we have design underway for the ADA work at Hastings and the HVAC system. We have some money sitting there. You all know it's like 1.2 million. It's about 500,000 for the design, probably. We would have biddable documents. We could go out to bid. We could get a hard number and have that for town meeting. But we don't, to your point, we aren't carrying an estimate right now for that gap funding. And the roof is being discussed. I guess the bottom line is that, and again, you know, the roof needs to be called out because it needs to be done. It needs to be in the cycle. And Ian's question is, well, what if we voted, I can see where his mind is. What if we vote to do the roof, but can we even do the roof? Because it still tips the same compliance, you know, things that we're dealing with, and the ADA needs to come first no matter what, right? So we all have been in this cycle of discussion. You know, because we had the roof where it was, we bumped it into one and brought it forward as a priority. There is, and again, to Steve's point, we have to have a hard number. Right now we're pushing those people that we would have a hard biddable number with like bid in hand by March town meeting, but we aren't carrying funding for it. So we would either request it in October, or if we had it by March, we can hold. So we're kind of in that place in the cycle. Would you be better to do a rough, and again, this is why Steve, I know I don't want to yell at me, don't yell at me. Like, do you want to do a rough order of magnitude? Do you want to instead hold a rough order of magnitude of cost for the ADA gap funding and bring that in and then defer the roof? Like, we're all in this together. Like, it's a weird project. We will have biddable drawings and we can push it to bid and have a number by spring town meeting, but we can't give you that number now. You'd have to hold it as an estimate.
Yeah, and I almost,
Conceptually, what I would think is that we have now a guesstimate for what the roof at Hastings would cost. If you took 12% of that and we came to March town meeting requesting that much funding for the roof so that we could get the biddable drawings, we could get the specification, and we could then target a bid to arrive, say, the middle of September, so that we would have a firm cost to actually go to town meeting with an article with a number that we would expect to have to pay. Kelly, does this process make sense to you?
Yes, for the Hastings roof, we did talk to an architectural firm, and they sent over a proposal for design and bidding process. But you know, it was one of those things that I didn't include it in we did a contingency in our package with the money, the 4.2, but this came in last minute. So it wasn't included in the process for this piece of the proposal for the architect for the roof.
Okay, so let me ask about the 4.2 in this instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How good do you think that number is? You think we could actually end up with a number that's 4.2 or less, without drawings, without any understanding of you know what the real cost is? I mean, where's the 4.2 come from? Rule of thumb, square feet? What?
It's the so if we did the roof in 2023, the roof would be 3.6. Then we go to 24. You have to add percentages, 15 to 18% for the cost uptake. You know, we see it all the time. They get a quote, and within 30 days, it's higher than it was. So the table that was given to me from the roofing company, he built in percentages for each year to help us. And so we did that. We built in that percentage, Bob and I, and then we did a little buffer with it because of the design. We know, as noted, that we're going to have to do architectural firm and design and public bid. So
I think the
should
number, I
stay
think,
in-
yeah, I do think the number's, a viable number, but, and the standard design for roofs isn't usually complex. I mean, we got the, Steve, this because we got the design work done on Armstrong's roof very quickly. And the estimates were kind of spot on to the expenditures overall. But it doesn't answer the question around, again, the order of operations. Currently, the ADA is being designed and is the HVAC, and we will have completed design drawings that are biddable. Question is, do we hold on the Hastings roof until we have the biddable drawings for the ADA and the HVAC, and we go out to bid and get a hard number, and you can rotate that in to, again, we could start, which we talked about was, once we have those biddable drawings, we could start some of the work with the funding that exists, and then come in the fall for the gap. And then at some point you would then rotate the full roof in. So,
I guess I have a couple of things. I think, we asked a question, and I think, and I love for the committee to comment. This is just my own thoughts. Is I feel like we do need to have, even if there's no dollars in it right now, holding that, because it sounds like the expectation is that we are going to have a capital item coming in March for ADA and HVAC. Now we know there is some money there, as you said, but that is in addition to the roof. And right now, we don't even have that we know it in our heads, but we don't have it as a placeholder on our cap expenditures, I don't think. Not that we have anything for them. I'm looking at Kim and others on that. So that's one piece. I think we have to, and just knowing that we don't know what it is, but in preparation that we are going to have an item there that it sounds like you'll be looking to fund at March town meeting as a capital item. So I think as we do our work over the next few weeks, it wouldn't be great to say, okay, we prioritize stuff and we did 4.2 Hastings, and then we get to March and said, hey, we said 4.2, and hey, we got another 5, and I'm just making up numbers here.
right.
ADA comes out and it's $5 million for ADA and HVAC, and now we've got $10 million aligned for Hastings, but we really didn't talk about it. So
Yeah,
just a suggestion. I guess what I would wonder though is maybe more importantly, because we're kind of in a current year versus, as Kim said, looking out future. I wonder if for those projects that are 2024, should we be putting in a 2023 capital request here for those engineering fees, so that as we get into next year's cycle, we're not having the same question again. We basically are going in saying, we've got full engineering drawings, whatever, and yes, there'll be some escalation in it, but we basically have a solid, base for what we think that good number is. So I throw that out to the committee. Just they've said a lot there, but just love for others' comments or thoughts.
Well, I agree with that in the sense, just to close the loop, we talked about the 4.2. If it was a 10% difference, that's $420,000 that were off. That's the reason why we got to do it the way Ian just explained.
I guess
Well, I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
Are you sure? Okay. I think that the learnable opportunity here for us as a committee is to very much to Steve's point that we need to be able to identify how concrete the numbers are that we're looking at here. And that statement comes with a couple of caveats. Like, for example, the first 5 items in the capital project request from the school all have the word estimate in their title. So the idea that we don't do estimates, clearly not accurate. The question is, is an estimate of some sort better than nothing? And I think that having something there is better than having nothing. And to that point, I think, again, back to what Steve said, I think we need to find a way to qualify the quality of our estimates. So they go all the way from wild-ass guess to biddable drawings in hand that are locked into place. Or in the case of, say, the police department, when they have cars, they're getting them off of a standard list for that they know the prices for. Same thing at DPW. So there's a spectrum there, and I think we can identify 2 or 3 anchor points, maybe even 4 different anchor points for the quality of the estimate. But having an estimate, I think, is better than not, because literally the work we're talking about at Hastings could double, potentially, wild-ass guess, could double the estimated work that we're going to be spending on or requesting money for in 24 and 25. And just not seeing it there at all seems like less effective than having just best guesses as to what they might be.
Yeah, Lisa, you had comments.
Yeah, I mean, if we are going to sort of implement a strategy going forward where that first line on the cost list, which is feasibility study and design, has to have, like, are we going to say that from now on, if you have a project of this size, in 1 year you get this line filled in, and then the next year you get to drop down and say, this is what it's going to cost? And is that what we're going to say we have to have? If it is already too late for the proposed 24 projects to have that spacing. So I guess what Kim is going to have to communicate with everyone as she gives us back our marching orders before we prioritize, are these now 25 projects? Are we going forward with making a prioritization decision as is with whatever these estimates are? Like, how do we work with this now? Because even if we want to do the multi-step process going forward, we're stuck with $5 million in requests that at the current moment are earmarked for 24 that aren't going to fit that process.
Yeah, Lisa, I think that's where I was going. I probably wasn't clear. I think you're right. I think we're kind of stuck. We have this here. Now we could say the way we want to do this is implement the process now and ask to push those out. I'm not sure we didn't give fair warning. We didn't give fair warning on that, but that's where my second piece was.
We've raised this before, but I think these are projects that are sort of in the works, and we need to separate out some of these projects that there have been these discussions around, and maybe jump ahead to anything that's after 25. Although I would say some of the FY25 projects, we could pull in design and feasibility work in the FY24 request.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, right. Kim, and that's where I was going. I think 24, we kind of got to go and figure this out, and unless, Amber or the school committee, whatever, says, hey, we're willing to wait on Hastings roof and to 25, and then we 24, and we go 25, we could put it out there. We'll get my
It
years.
would go out to 25, right?
Yeah.
Because then.
Yeah, but I think that those that are out another year that don't have that, basically we should ask that we get a number. And as Steve said, whatever, 12% is kind of the running. We should actually ask that we put something on for this year, capital to spend on design we leave the rough estimate in for 25. But then once we get that, we spend the money in design. By this time next year, we'll revise that number. So just use Hastings at 4.2, saying we're a year out, and it comes in and it's, 4.6, we can revise it. And then we know when we go to town meeting in March of 24 for 25 projects that we have a 4.6 solid number because we have biddable.
Right. And again, this is a good conversation. You also have some of the process that's halfway through in Hastings is a particularly convoluted one when it triggered all the ADA stuff. But regardless, it is a tough cycle to manage, because what we're seeing around the cost escalations is that even when you're doing design and it's a good chunk of change just to do design, and then to get biddable drawings. And if you don't know that you can then anticipate, you go out to bid, you're spending money. We've got, and to Steve's point, we can spend money once we have design drawings. They don't age, they're decent. You can get longevity out of them. That makes sense. You can come and you do have to kind of work off a rough order of magnitude in order to back into your design costs. So it takes, like, we're all becoming more expert. Our rough order of magnitude, as an example, for design for the ADA and the HVAC is based off of the rough order of magnitude cost estimates they gave us to do the work. And they ran the rough estimates, they gave us the numbers, we calculated, you know, the design costs, and then brought them to you and got approval to do them within the scope of the current article. So the actual trajectory right now for design and biddable drawings that we could go out to bid and get a number are on track for Hastings for the ADA and the HVAC, but we're not holding any funding right now.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I guess I would suggest that we hold some funding using that rough order of magnitude that was given there, and then we refine it once we get the, you know, as we get closer to town meeting. Because it well, I guess here's my question. Maybe I'm assuming though that you're the school, not you, the school department, school committee is gonna be looking to bring those items to March town meeting for funding. So besides the stuff you presented tonight, those are two other items that we should expect will be capital requests for 2024.
That was
And just by way of,
I think to the extent that the presentations basically said, well, as Amber has alluded to, that the whole Hastings package, ADA and the HVAC, is anticipated with a rough order of magnitude estimate of around 5.1, 5.2. And so the 10% of that is the 500,000 that was mentioned here, of which there was enough money that was already allocated in order to continue based on the town meeting's vote to get to the point where we have biddable drawings of the specification. The anticipation is that we will have that information to go to the town meeting, and if we don't, then it will be the fall town meeting that would go to town meeting with a bid to do the work. So in effect, it is the model that we've just been talking about. On the other hand, we could say, well, we don't have anything on the roof costs other than the rough order of magnitude, the 4.2. And we know from Mass General laws that we have to hire an architect or an engineer in order to participate in creating the drawings and the specifications for that work. So it would be timely to go into town meeting with, the concept of funding the engineering for the roof work at Hastings or any other project doing the same concept. In which case, then we at least have one of the unknowns in the process to be able to come back either in the fall or in spring of next year to get the money to actually do the work. And I think that's a model that I support based on what was discussed by Ian and Andrew here.
Yeah, I think
the risk.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, cut you off.
I mean, we make,
I was
guys,
just going to say, removes the risk of when you go to town meeting and then have to come back 3 times like we have so far on the Hastings work.
and I think though, it still leaves us with a missing number. And I think you could look at the rough order of magnitude and do 12% of the estimate of the 4.3 million or whatever we had there, and do design, come in for the roof just to start to build your model. You come back and you say, okay, school committee, you want this roof, we're going to give you 400,000 for design. You need whatever it is we need to do, go do your design, and that'll be approved for 24. And we're holding, and we can give you a rough order of magnitude, just like anticipated, for the completion of the ADA and the HVAC, and you could hold a number, because otherwise you have to wait.
We've already done that one, Amber. We've already done the rough order of magnitude. We've got the engineering for ADA and for the HVAC. That one's a dead duck. We're moving
Yeah,
to
but-
Yeah,
getting
but
a
Steve, to
real
the
bid
point,
price.
we don't have it on
But
the
we don't-
capital plan right now.
Right, it's not the gap, the funding difference between the articles that have been voted and what we find when we actually get the ADA funding. We are not holding anything in the cycle of capital for that needed funding. And to their point, it would kind of be out
for
of
the construction.
process.
Yes.
Right.
So-
And
so what I would- what I
otherwise-
would-
I agree with you.
Yeah, so what I would
Yeah.
think
I
though
agree.
right now is that we would have in our capital plan right now, thinking about the process we've talked about, we should have a 2024 capital request for Hastings ADA and HVAC at 5.2 million, whatever that number was. That was that order of magnitude that we based the design off of. So we have a holding spot that we think that's going to come to the March town meeting. And we will revise that number as we get closer when we get the results of the work that's ongoing right now, the engineering and design work that's happening right now that's been funded.
That's accurate. That is completely accurate. I don't think it will be 5 because you have like you have several million already sitting there. But
Right, so whatever, I just threw that out there, yeah, but
yeah, but
5
yes,
minus what's funding, but yeah, I think we need to have that as a.
Wait, I feel strongly that if that's like, we need it to plug our numbers into our process of
yes.
setting up the priorities. And
Correct.
I plead ignorance here. I missed fall town meeting. I was out of town for work, and I probably didn't check, all the notes and catch up on what was voted on, but it actually had escaped me jumping back into this committee that there was another huge project hanging over Hastings. So I really would have loved to have seen that, in the packet to bring me back up to speed for my, reporting for duty for this committee.
Yeah, no,
And
I
I
hear
think-
what you're saying. Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say the real world application from this committee's point of view, I think, is that another $5X million for Hastings, if we know that that's a priority, and I think it is because of like how much you've spoken about it. Does the 1.1 million for Mill Pond become a necessity this year, or is it possibly movable for next year? I don't know, and I'm not looking to have that question asked and answered right now. I'm just saying that it's not a question I would even ask about Mill Pond if I didn't know about that other potential or expected amount to hit. So just a thought.
No, I mean that's why I like that we finally got to a place where capital is getting a good depth of discussion. I know it's complex, but I just want to say thank you. When I presented Mill Pond, I said I gave you that flexibility that as you looked at cross expenditures, that repair is still going to be potentially viable. A year from now, you could push it out. If you want to move into adding a placeholder for the construction that we will have a biddable number for by Springtown meeting, you put in a placeholder. You currently have 4 million sitting there already in voted articles, and we will need basically the ADA cost. So if you hold 5 million, and while we work the number for you as you move through your process, you would have finally the construction of all the pieces of Hastings in alignment. And if you wanted to, you would approve the engineering of the roof, just the engineering, which would be 12% of the total estimate, which is like 400,000. So yeah, so that would be the process that you guys are trying to develop.
Correct.
And you would do engineering, and we'd do that. You'd have a holder, the last rough order of magnitude placeholder we need, in the system. You map that in, and then all of the other requests gets pushed out against, actual biddable drawings.
Yeah, and the one final thing, Amber, I would say is those 2025 projects.
Yeah.
We put in a 2024 request for those large ones to do and get funded the design and engineering. So we come to March town meeting next year in the spot we're going to be this year with the ADA, but you know,
Yeah,
hopefully we have
yes.
the design, because we voted in March, we'll have the design by the time we're doing capital expenditures right now and have a firmer number.
Right.
As
Right.
we
And
prepare.
that's where you guys are doing layers of work, which is okay, if we really want to tackle the high school roof in 25, yeah, let's go ahead and do the
Spend some money
design
this
this
year,
year. Right. And then we come with an absolute concrete bidded document to the March town meeting in 25.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and
And I
maybe
think
one final for Amber is that I think what's really critical is that I don't want to be the one to say that Mill Pond can slide another year. I think we trust the folks who are the owners of the budgets for all of these different things, and obviously you're owner for a ton more with the school, more than the budget. But I would look to you to say, I really feel this needs to be done for Mill Pond, but let's see all the different costs here, and we'll weigh against that. So I don't want my words to be what causes anything to slide. I want you to put out there what you feel is most important, and then we need to weigh that in the biggest picture.
And I think Kelly and I presented it with the flexibility in the sense that it was a repair to kick the can down the road. We could probably wait on the repair and kick the repair a little bit, but there will be a window. We'll go back and we'll say to Adam, we can't do this year. How far out do you get the opportunity to do that repair to get the 20 years on the Mill Pond roof, which is well worth doing, and come back with that? But you could defer that one and push it out and focus on Hastings. But I think clustering the schools together logically does better at town meeting for people to make sense of it as well, as we look at tackling projects.
Absolutely. And I think, I'll stop saying this, but coming in and Steve had said it, but just reinforcing what he said, coming in with firm numbers to the schools. I know we heard it, you heard it at this town meeting with Hastings. I think we got to get Hastings behind us.
Right.
Firm numbers, but let's not have another Hastings where we go back
Right.
multiple times to town meeting because the number keeps changing.
I agree. Kelly and I will prep a sheet for it and send it over tomorrow. We'll pull the documents and the backup of all the numbers we've been given so that you feel like the number your rough order magnitude holding feels logical. I'll send that to you. We can get that done and send it to you Monday at the latest. Just to stay within compliance of the structure. And then
Perfect.
and then you've got the piece you need. The sheet is there, and then it folds into your discussion.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Can I just
Okay.
clarify
Thank you.
whether the restoration, the Mill Pond, sort of fits into this same, does it need a bid? Does everything need a bid? So should we also be inserting 100,000, give or take, into FY24 for this Mill Pond restoration so that we could bump it out with a solid bid for 25?
It's just a seal coat though. It's not like a design. It's not the same.
Okay, because I just
Well, it
have here in the
depends upon the amount of
description that
money.
it's,
The price will,
Mass General Laws requires
Indicate,
projects that you're going to use public funds for,
yes.
based on the magnitude, to have an engineer or an architect involved. And I can't remember what that limit is. I think it's around 150,000.
Yeah.
If
Well, it's
the
more than
project
that.
is
So
150,000.
so the answer is
more. I
yes.
can't
we would
remember what
need
it is,
Right.
Okay.
Right.
but
But if
whatever it
you're
is,
gonna-
that's when you need one.
So then I would say, when we look at the stack of these numbers, then in 25, you do the design for Mill Pond and you do it in 26. If it's
Okay.
possible, because I just feel like we're all trying to make good decisions here. This was brought to you as one that would give us 20 years on that roof and push it out and was a smaller number than what that would be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
I think it's a
but
great,
it would
I think
seem
it's,
to me-
I think it's great and I appreciate it coming because I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So
So we could, and again, Kelly will go back tomorrow and get a confirmation memo from Adam before, and we'll send it over. But it would be logical in the way you're staging these then, that for 25, we would do the funding for design for the Mill Pond and do it in spring of 26 or
okay.
fall of 26.
yeah, as long
if you fund it.
as somebody isn't going to say nope because it's not going to make it that long, and then you're asking for $5 million for the new roof, and
Exactly,
then we
You're right,
mess
Lisa.
ourselves
Exactly
up trying to, yeah.
No, I know.
And that
It's
goes
like,
back
I
to,
feel like-
what you're saying goes back to what Andrew's saying, is we're going to rely on you guys to not
Yeah.
let it slip if it really needs to get done, because that's
Well,
Okay,
that'd be
so we'll
foolish on our
go-
part,
we'll-
but, yeah.
yeah, I'll contact the roofing company again and get some more specifics. He knew that we couldn't do everything, roof wise throughout district. And he said that, they're very viable. There's low moisture. So I feel comfortable that he's going to come back with saying we can wait another year. But I'll get it in writing from him.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Try to dump more work on you, Kelly.
Okay.
Okay, so this has been so productive. I just want to say thank you.
No, thank you. This was for me, I personally, it was a really good discussion and kind of solidified some things in my mind, and I appreciate it. So Kim's been probably telling us this stuff for 3 years, and it hasn't sunk in.
It's finally sinking in, right?
Exactly, Lisa.
Well, we're getting there. We're getting there as a team. Like, we're getting to a place where we're mapping stuff strategically, and there's such big numbers. So I just want to say thank you, and I respect that you guys tend to remember things. And Lisa, you say you don't remember, but you have one of the best working memories I've ever seen. I'll pull any documents that we have, and I'll send them to you, because I did a memo on Hastings and kind of laid out some history on it. I'll send it to you, and we should be good.
Great.
All
Any
right.
other questions? Sorry, we
How could there be any?
No more. No mas. Okay.
Thank you
Great.
so much, you guys. Thank you.
Amber, David, Kelly, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks
very much.
Have a good
night.
evening.
Talk to you guys later. Yep.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers.
Okay. Thank you, everybody on the committee, for that discussion. To me, I feel like we made kind of feels like a major breakthrough here. So I think that was really good.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there isn't an opportunity to look ahead to how we categorize. Like, I know we already have definitions for we have a definition sheet for how these estimates are put together, but just how concrete numbers are when they're put into the estimates, because I think that will allow us to see things. It would allow it'll allow people to put things on the estimate sheet where they can admit that they just have a very good idea, if not a firm commitment, document design level. I think it's just a way of approaching it. It was a school discussion, but I think a lot of our other groups may know about. DPW comes to mind. They may be able to start putting some of these thoughts together and bubble to the surface some of the estimates that they might feel concerned about putting out right now, because we don't have a way of saying this is an estimate and knowing that they won't be held against it. If you give me a 3 quality number versus a number 1 quality number, when the number is off by 15% in a year, well, you warned us. It was just a 3 quality number because it wasn't based on anything firm. And we're better served by having the best input and the best guess, even if we don't know the full and concrete. In my humble opinion.
So I think it makes sense. I think our goal here is to put a process in place that, in looking out 2 years, that those would be 3 numbers, but as we get to the year we're putting it on, they're 1 numbers. We're not putting 3 numbers on the list to go to town meeting.
Right, and if a 3 number needs more investigation as each year goes by, then that you budget in, well, this needs to get a bid, this needs to get a drawing, this needs to hire an engineer, this needs to call an expert,
Absolutely.
as they move along, and that those things get placed, again, with top line design next year, next line building next year, and move it through the process.
Yeah.
It matters what the category is. So, and I think Andrew's point, this is a very helpful discussion, because I can now, when I ask department heads to give more information, we've had the conversation, and I can point to this and say, identify if you're putting in for a piece of equipment, a piece of heavy equipment the DPW wants, when they're talking to the vendors, identify, I'm asking for this piece of equipment 3 years out. The vendor is suggesting to use this as an escalation factor, and that's what has been built in there. And we know those will change, and particularly with what's going on right now. Construction projects, so you've got your construction projects, your building projects, you've got your infrastructure work. So we've got different categories, and some you can get better estimates that you're more comfortable with, kind of what they're grounded in, and others it's really it's based, sometimes it's based on square footage. You can use the, what's a typical cost per square foot for a public sector building renovation. What's the typical cost per square foot or linear foot for some of the infrastructure stuff that Chris deals with in DPW. But to your point, I've been asking them to at least sort of give some indicator of what they're basing their estimates on. And then obviously, to Lisa's point, as we get to 2 years out, and then as we get to, it's being proposed, those should be rock solid numbers.
Yep. Okay, moving us along in the agenda, Kim, do you want to hit the item on discussion of evaluation criteria and project rating?
Sure. I put that on there only because I think as at the end of, we're meeting again on Monday night. We had talked about meeting on the 21st to hear the last of the departmental presentations. So at this point, I did post that agenda today. I will get you the materials tomorrow, but my expectation is at the end of Monday night's meeting, you will have heard from all of the departments. You will have the project detail sheets. I will make sure anything that's been updated, you have the most updated versions, and I will have for you the Excel spreadsheet summarizing the project costs by year, which pretty much sets you up to go through and evaluate the projects. I did distribute the criteria, I think before our last meeting, and yep. So this is really a preview if you have a chance to review that. So if there are any questions, comments, or concerns, we can talk about it on Monday night before I actually ask you to spend time evaluating them and hopefully have things back to me the week after Thanksgiving.
Great. Any questions on that?
Can you refresh my memory, Kim? We rate current year only, or we rate all the way through?
We have backed off, and the past couple of years we've focused on the current year.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Thank you, Lisa.
Just
Any other
a
questions?
couple of thoughts in regards to the discussion that we just had. When a vehicle would cost 50 grand, 10% swing is only $5,000, which the town can absorb in one way or another. If we're talking a $5 million project, 10% is a $500,000 swing, and we can't absorb that. And that's the reason why, I'm sort of adamant about the discussion we had tonight as being super important, because I was the one that has been at town meeting trying to sell Hastings 3 times without having done this project. And so others will get up and do it next time.
Oh, Ian, you're muted. Please, what did you just?
I was going to say fourth time's a charm, Steve.
Yeah. Well, at least I think we have the outline of a structure that can work. I think we can use the state bid laws as the threshold for when we have to be serious about the number that we're going to bring forward, which establishes the process by which you have to have certain people doing certain things.
Yep.
I've been espousing this for a couple of years now. I think hopefully that everybody finally heard how important this is when inflation is as bad as it's been.
Yep.
So thanks for your patience tonight, guys.
No, thanks, Steve. Like I said, I thought it was a good discussion. Any other business in front of us, Kim? Anything on your side or anything from the committee?
I don't think I have anything else.
Okay. So Monday night at 6 is our next meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Bradley, second.
Seconded by Bradley. Since we're on video, roll call vote. So Lisa?
Blazejewski, yes.
Leah? Oops, on mute.
Come to us, Leah.
Yeah. Andrew?
Sorry,
Bradley, yes.
I'm like trying to get to the unmute button. Sorry, I was just talking to a neighbor. Are we at the end here, McLean? Yes.
Yeah, yes, we are. That's your
Yes,
vote
sir,
to
vote.
adjourn. Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Andrew
Thank you.
Bradley, yes.
and Steve.
Correct. Yes.
And Johnson, yes. So thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday.
Great.
Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all, guys.
Thank
Cheers.
you.